This whole thing starts in the late 90s, back when coding was WordPad. My school was looking to set up a website, and because I had taken 2 years of electrical engineering and learned actual programming, that was my job. I set up a very basic website for the school, but it was very basic, and I felt I needed to have more practice in order to be able to do this job well. I was looking to see what else I could possibly do to help out with that when a friend of mine posted a website about himself. He told me one of the reasons he did it was because doing it over and over was good practice for him. And it occurred to me that I could do the same kind of thing to get better at writing HTML. But I needed something to write about. I didn't want to talk about myself. So after a while, I considered and decided I'd talk about Voyager, because it was something that I was talking about anyway. My opinion of the show has been discussed before, but to reiterate, I'd been jazzed about Voyager before it came out. I got the TV Guide articles on it. I checked the newspaper about it. I was very disappointed when the show actually launched, and it just didn't seem to be anywhere as good as I'd hoped it'd be. After a while, I stopped watching it because I got so disillusioned with it, but I eventually picked it back up again on the recommendation of the same exact guy. Once the Borg showed up in Scorpion, he said, "Come on, the Borg are back. You have to at least tune in for this. Besides, you want to see Neelix tell Janeway, even I think this is a bad idea." I stayed afterwards because I liked the character of 7 of 9 and what they might be able to do with her. And some of my frustration now was they're doing things with her, but they could be doing so much more. That's so limited. It was the same kind of frustration I had before. So I decided to give voice to my frustrations and practice my coding at the same time. This went on long past the point when I left teaching to go on to other things. One thing we had in fact tried, me and the other person, his name was Silvermoose. He had been my college roommate. Silvermoose and I tried to do an actual video review of Voyager. We shot it on a tiny little camera that he had, but unfortunately there was nothing we could do with it. I scanned it into my computer, but there was no place to host it. Even in a small videotape size, it was way too big to put anywhere for video hosting, and gradually it got corrupted and lost, so it's gone. If you're curious, the episode was part 1 of Equinox, when it actually aired. So I'd already had the idea of doing video reviews rather than just my text stuff, but the internet literally wasn't ready for that yet. It just wasn't in a state where you could host videos like that. So I just went on to other things. It wasn't until I saw that there were video reviews on YouTube that I realized I could go back to trying to do it the way we wanted to. Text, in the end, is somewhat limited. I mean, I am a writer, so it's not that I'm dismissing text, but there are some things that are just lost when you do this kind of thing. So in January 2008, I got the idea to start supplementing my written reviews with actual video reviews hosted on YouTube. I would take the ones that I had already done and just adapt them to post on YouTube. The one I started out with was Emanations. I picked that one because it was just so visually goofy. The hats that they put on those people were just ridiculous. It always amazed me that Voyager would pick out things that were supposed to be alien but just looked Dr. Seuss. While I had the text of the original review that I had written up, I tried to improvise off of it. One of the things that I did was I commented on something that Chakotay had said, and then ad-libbed, "Welcome to the idiocy that is Voyager," before starting it out. Then when I went to do the next one, the 37s, I wound up accidentally blurting out the exact same line at the start. For a little while, that became the unintended catchphrase of the show, but I stopped doing that because it seemed kind of mean-spirited. Ultimately, my feeling wasn't that Voyager was terrible. My feeling was that Voyager had potential that was squandered, and that remark didn't really reflect that at all. In fact, this was the reason why I decided to do The Cloud, because I felt I should do an episode that shows that I actually don't hate this show, that I'm willing to give it a fair chance. In the end, it makes much more sense to take someone seriously if they don't hate absolutely everything all the time. Keep in mind, again, we're talking the early days of YouTube. This is 2008. YouTube was only, a year or two old at that time? And already, of course, the nostalgia critic and the angry video game nerd were huge at this time, and that kind of set the tone. I wanted to establish that I wasn't doing this because I wanted to hate on Voyager every week. Again, ultimately, it's not hatred, it's disappointment. Needless to say, I started out extremely small. While I did have a small audience who regularly checked out my website, I didn't update it often enough in order to justify checking it as often as people would need to make it a habit or anything like that. What really helped to spread the word were two people. The first was Confused Matthew, who was also doing some Star Trek stuff at the time, and Linkara, who of course you obviously know. Both of them liked my show and spoke about it, and that helped with the word of mouth to cause it to grow. In those early days, I was trying to do little themes after a while once I got settled in. And when I decided to start doing the Q episodes, I thought, I don't know why, maybe I should cover all of the Q episodes that exist first in order to give it context. So I wound up going and doing Next Generation episodes and DS9, the one episode. When I got to the episode Tapestry, I think that was really the one where I had to say, look, your normal technique doesn't work with this. There's not anything that you can really rag on this episode about, even just tongue-in-cheek. Tapestry was the one where I had to just throw caution to the wind and say, hey, can I do something that's mostly serious here? That went out over very well, fortunately. And that really set the tone of the show and the very idea of it. Serious analysis, silly behavior. The character of Janeway, as she appears in my version of the show, first began to emerge thanks to Parallax. In that meeting where Tom Paris questions about the whole time distortion thing, and then says, am I making any sense? And she says, no, but that's okay. I thought, that was just so pointlessly cruel. And that kind of was the origin, the little seed that was planted that blossomed into what's become known as Insane Way or Parody Janeway or Crazy Janeway. This kind of a blend of madness and mad scientist and awesomeness and occasional cluelessness, all kind of forming this weird bouillabaisse that became the character. Performing Janeway has always been my favorite part of the show, and without Voyager, and don't have to bring up Prodigy, but without Voyager, it's something that I am going to miss doing. The character was just fun to have this outlet. The reason why I think that my video game reviews go over as well as they do is that they're a bit more unfiltered as far as what they have to be about, and so you can just spit out any thought. And that's Janeway. Janeway is just spitting out whatever random thing pops in there. The important thing with it is that Janeway can't be in there all the time doing everything. It's got to be something that just emerges from it organically. You can't force Janeway. Linkara recommended to me several times that I should start taking the show over to Blip. I was resistant because I didn't want to seem like I was selling out. This was not, at the time, you were not paid for being on YouTube at all. There was no, ad revenue or anything like that. You got free hosting and were happy with it. Oh, you also had an 11-minute limitation. Technically, it was supposed to be 10 minutes, but I found that you can go to 10:59, so I always aimed for the 10-something as far as the show length. The reason why things tend to be split at that point in a lot of cases was because simple inertia related to that. But he suggested that I should take the show over to Blip. I decided, because I had tried doing Red Dwarf on YouTube and it got pulled down, that I would take everything that wasn't Star Trek, keep Star Trek over on YouTube, and then start putting things over on Blip. Then I got the idea, well, why can't I have it on both? there's no reason that I can't also put the stuff in both places. People would watch it so much more on YouTube, yes, but I could put that on Blip. And what's more, if I'm putting it on Blip, maybe I can fix it up a bit. The first stuff was all recorded using a literal $5 microphone that I got at Walmart that's meant to clip on someone's tie. So the audio quality was poor. I edited it in the Windows Movie Maker, so it was just atrocious. And I said, why don't I just do these ones all over again and post them on Blip and keep the other stuff up there and keep posting on YouTube? So that's when two different versions started to emerge, but I kept the Blip ones just on Blip, like a wall between the two. Well, a point was reached then when all of a sudden they were not tolerating having Star Trek stuff over on my YouTube channel. So then I had to pull it all down and had to move everything over to Blip. And that's when the channel switched over to far more serious material, because it was the only kind of thing that I could get through on there was the stuff without any clips that were going to get me any copyright strikes. They were much, much more frequent with strikes back then. I get a lot of flagging today, but I haven't gotten a strike yet. Well, I should rephrase that. I got a warning for a strike for a reason that I'm not even entirely sure of. So that's fun. But I had to move everything over to Blip then and move forward that way. After that, of course, it became a series of moving from one host to the next until they would either shut down or price us out of the market. And now we've kind of come full circle in that things are going back up on YouTube again. Now it's funny that it's almost exactly 15 years after I posted Emanations originally on YouTube that today I am now posting the final Voyager episode, the last one that I had to do, Hunters. And it wasn't planned, it just worked out this way. There's still some hints, though, of those text origins for it. In addition to Silver Moose, my cousin, Evil Kniebler, would sometimes contribute to the written reviews. He actually should deserve credit, if you want to call it that, for Neelix's nickname. I don't use it as often anymore these days, but if you want to know, Neelix's nickname is Shithead. It's thanks to the episode Once Upon a Time, when Flotter the Water first meets him. And he just spontaneously starts blurting out this little conversation between the two of them. Who are you? Neelix. I'm going to call you Shithead. I don't really like that. Shut up, Shithead. So that's where Neelix's nickname came in. Because of that, I started using it in the written reviews. Then it got moved over into the recorded reviews. And it's kind of stuck with it since then. Since I've stuck with it, you might be wondering, Chuck, is your hatred of Neelix an act? Or is your hatred of Neelix pathetic? As we've established, I've been doing this since the show was actually still on the air. So again, for a lot of you, Voyager is nostalgia. For me, this has been an unbroken series of events since then. So let me reiterate. I still don't like Neelix. That hasn't changed. And let me also reiterate that I have nothing but positive feelings for Ethan Phillips. Always great to see him in things. He's not a bad actor. The reason I don't like Neelix isn't because he's bad at it. It's because I find the character infuriating and irritating and would like to punch him in the face. I mean, not till he's bleeding. Like with a boxing glove, Going back to when the show started, things were really Wild West back then when we didn't really know a lot of what the rules were or anything. So I saw that other people had a little title sequence. I didn't have any means at all in order to generate one. So I decided to simply use clips from the show and some music. I've always been a big Roxette fan. And I particularly liked their song Harleys and Indians, Riders in the Sky, which just has some great guitar to it. And so I trimmed up the the guitar from all of that and used that to form the music that was used to open up each show. That became the kind of idea behind it, because that actually had come about around the time that Voyager had started. So it was reflective of the period that it was. So that became kind of a thing going forward, that each of the series would have music that was selected from its particular era that also kind of reflected it. Now, of course, with the strictness of YouTube, I have to be more selective about what I'm doing. So I can't put it on every single one every single week like that. But I figure every once in a while I can slip something in to make an exception. But getting back to Voyager itself, I actually recognized two actors right away that were regulars from previous work that I'd seen. The Doctor, of course, was our favorite character from the beginning. There was just something to appreciate about his sane man surrounded by lunatics situation that he was in. And he was one of the two performers. Kate Mulgrew, had been in a lot of other roles. I remembered her specifically from the Mrs. Columbo show, the murder mystery thing that she did. And I still wasn't ready for her voice, though. I guess I must have up-registered it in my memory. And I recognized Robert Picardo right away and I'd like to thank anybody out here who doesn't raise an eyebrow at what I'm about to say. I remembered him from China Beach. Thank you, person who recognized that name. Yeah, it's the China Beach guy. Hey, what happened to his hair? Janeway, though, she quickly became known to us as Captain Crunch, on account of her remark about Captain is acceptable, Ma'am is acceptable in a crunch, but she wants to be called Captain. So I think it was Silvermoose actually who was the first to call her Captain Crunch. We also had a nickname for Chakotay because of the way that Torres in the second episode, Parallax, pronounced his name. Like it sounded like she was trying to say it to give it more of the Native American sound to it. Instead, it came out sounding like she said Chocolate Day. So for a long time, and in the original written reviews, we called him Chocolate Day. In fact, we would always say it in the stupidest voice we could, like this: Chocolate Day! So that was our immense respect for the show. Again, though, part of it was just frustration and disappointment. We wanted to like the show. The fact that it wasn't meeting us part way by being, good was the frustrating part of it. When we got to the Cloud, I was like, okay, are they doing like an update of that classic TAS episode? No, of course not. I wanted the show to be so much better than it was. And it was disappointing that it was so mediocre, so blasé. Someone described it as being the equivalent of a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese. You know exactly what you're getting with it. It's just that it could be so much more. I mean, these people, you see them in episodes where they're given the material that they just knock it out of the park. Let me reiterate about Survival Instinct. Survival Instinct is a middle-of-the-road episode that is elevated simply by the fact that these people know exactly what to do with it. They take what on DS9 would probably have been a 5 or a 6, and they just, put it right through the roof there. It's excellent. All around, everybody delivers on their performances. The whole thing is just great. It's such a sign of what the show could have been, and where, again, my frustration comes from. Oh, if you would just remove your shackles and take flight like you should, you would be so great. But I will, in the end, give Voyager this credit. At least it wasn't anywhere near as frustrating and bad as the sequel novels were. Oh, I read the first two of them about what happens after they actually got back. And I was like, wow, that was money I should have just flushed down the toilet. I don't even want to get started on how much I disliked those books through and through. Ugh. The show deserves an epilogue, and that is not it. But anyway, this is the conclusion of a long journey. Every Voyager episode we've now covered. We can move on to other things, although still obviously they need to get migrated here for YouTube proper, thanks to the many, many moves that have taken place, and that will gradually roll them out, but there's none left. This is it. So, thank you to all of you who are here at this end of the long journey, and special thanks to everyone who has come along for the ride during this 15-year trip since this all started on YouTube back then. Who could have imagined that we'd be sitting here now like this in the year 2022? Think about that. The year 2022. It just sounds so futuristic. I mean, it sounds like something I would have seen on one of those 80s VHS tapes, in the cheap sci-fi section. In the year 2022, America faces a crisis. And that crisis is a railroad strike. Could you imagine telling someone that in the distant year of 2022, a major issue would be a railroad strike? What are we going to do? Send a telegram to the Pinkertons to sort it out? But yeah, it's kind of a reminder that it's not going to be flying cars and silver suits when we talk about the future. We don't throw things away just because they're old if they still work. Yeah, we still got trains around. Got anything better? Anything just as cost-effective as that? No? Then shut up, sit down, and get on the damn train. As people interested in Star Trek, we talk about the future all the time. And yet here we have progressed into the future the long way, and we've seen the way that works. And we see that becoming a utopia is not as simple as just saying it all works itself out. In the end, we've got to be the ones to figure it out. Or if not us, whoever comes after us. Somebody's got to figure it out. It doesn't just happen. The future becomes whatever you make it. And if you don't come up with a better idea than a train, then you're going to wind up with railroad strikes. That's just the way it works. If you want things to be different, you got to figure out a way to make them different. Of course, my method is the least effective. Go on YouTube and talk in a ridiculous voice. Just remember, I know all, I see all. I have installed cameras everywhere. Yes, especially when you're on the toilet. Okay, but again, thank you all for being here today on this special day. And I hope that you'll continue in the other works that we look at, especially the stuff that's coming in the new year. So much to be excited about. Drawing the curtain on a few things, but a whole bunch of great new things are just around the corner. So, thanks. See you in the new year.